Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are diving into a really cinematic masterclass on pH measurement and buffer solutions, originally presented by the brilliant Dr. Cam. I'm super excited to go through this one with you. We're going to take this amazing, kind of dramatic journey together, starting all the way from the literal life or death chemistry happening inside our own bodies, right down to the meticulous, high-stakes precision of laboratory measurements. Let's get into it.
So, here is our game plan for today. First, we'll look at the chemical shock absorbers. Second, the math of balance. Third, the anatomy of an electrode. Fourth, the art of calibration. And finally, number 5, avoiding measurement errors.
All right, I want you to take a deep breath. Right now, as you do that, your cells are busy undergoing cellular respiration. And as a byproduct, they're constantly dumping acidic carbon dioxide right into your bloodstream. Without some sort of active defense mechanism in place, this non-stop acid dump would totally tank your blood pH. I mean, it would literally turn to acid in a matter of minutes. So you might be wondering, what on earth prevents this kind of fatal catastrophe? Well, the hero here is a buffer. A buffer solution is basically a solution whose pH resists change when you add small amounts of a strong acid or base. You can kind of think of them as chemical shock absorbers. They rely on this beautifully elegant equilibrium between a weak acid and its conjugate base. So when excess protons, meaning acid, enter the system, the conjugate base just absorbs the shock and neutralizes the threat. It's brilliant. Section 1. The chemical shock absorbers. The primary defense mechanism in human blood is what we call the bicarbonate buffer system. It uses carbonic acid and the bicarbonate ion. And what's really wild here is the physical biology built around the chemistry. Catalyzed by an enzyme called carbonic anhydrase, your body actually leverages Le Chatelier's principle. Your lungs literally exhale the excess acid as carbon dioxide, which is a process called respiratory compensation. At the exact same time, your kidneys are putting in the work with renal compensation, secreting hydrogen ions into your urine and reabsorbing bicarbonate. Your organs are just constantly shifting this chemical equilibrium to keep you alive. Moving on to Section 2, the math of balance. Okay, this number is everything. 20 to 1. According to the famous Henderson-Hasselbalch equation, to maintain a strict human blood pH of 7.4, which is where the pKa of carbonic acid sits at roughly 6.1 at physiological temperatures, your body has to relentlessly maintain a ratio of 20 parts bicarbonate to exactly 1 part carbonic acid. If that 20-to-1 ratio drifts even a little bit, you enter a state of acidosis or alkalosis, and that is definitely not good. Now, trying to recreate this perfect biological buffering in a laboratory setting, it actually used to be a total nightmare. That is, until 1966, when Norman Good completely revolutionized biochemistry. He developed a series of synthetic zwitterionic buffers, things like HEPAs and MES, that were based on some really strict criteria. Good realized that a lab buffer absolutely needed a pKa right between 6 and 8. It had to be highly water-soluble, but, and this is key, impermeable to cell membranes, so it wouldn't accidentally flood the actual cells being studied. And, most importantly, it had to be biochemically inert. Norman Good's buffers really became the unsung heroes of modern biological research. Which brings us to Section 3, anatomy of an electrode. So how do we actually measure these microscopic, totally invisible hydrogen ions? Well, inside the architecture of a glass pH electrode, you've got a device that generates an electrical voltage that's strictly proportional to the hydrogen ion activity. The Nernst equation tells us we should see a slope of about 59.16 millivolts for every single unit change in pH. But, an electrode doesn't just work alone. A true pH measurement system actually requires two distinct halves. On one side, you have the glass measuring electrode, which responds dynamically to whatever your sample is. On the other side, you absolutely must have a reference electrode, which supplies a super stable, fixed voltage that is completely independent of the sample. The big takeaway here is that your pH meter doesn't just measure a single voltage. No, it measures the difference in voltage between these two electrodes. Deep inside the reference internal, you'll find a silver/silver chloride setup. It sits in a filling solution with a fixed chloride concentration, which locks its potential perfectly in place. But the real magic happens over in the critical hydrated glass layer. This is the absolute heart of the measurement. The pH glass membrane actually absorbs water, creating this microscopic gel layer that's only about 50 nanometers thick. It's the ion exchange between the alkali metals in this wet layer and the hydrogen ions in your sample that physically generates the voltage. And that leads us to the absolute golden rule of pH measurement. Listen up, because this is crucial. Never, ever store your electrode in distilled or deionized water. Remember that delicate 50-nanometer hydrated layer we just talked about? Well, it needs ions to survive. If you dunk it into pure distilled water, those ions are just violently leached right out of the glass. The membrane dries out, the resistance skyrockets, and you end up with incredibly noisy, super inaccurate readings. Always use the proper storage solution for sure.
All right, Section 4, the art of calibration.
There's a famous saying, pH measurements are only as good as the buffers used to calibrate. And yeah, that is 100% true, because electrodes are basically just transducers producing a raw millivolt signal. They are flying totally blind without some context. That raw signal has to be converted into absolute pH values using precisely known standard buffers. If your buffer is wrong, well, your entire experiment is wrong. So here is the meticulous, non-negotiable procedure for doing this. Step 1, you must start with the pH 7.00 buffer. This establishes the offset, or the asymmetry potential 0 point. It essentially aligns the meter. Only after that do you move to step 2, the slope, where you use a pH 4.01 or 10.01 buffer, depending entirely on what range you expect your sample to be in. And finally, step 3 is verification. Use a third independent buffer to make sure the mathematical line drawn by your meter actually maps to reality. Let's wrap up with Section 5, avoiding measurement errors. You really have to watch out for this notorious trap known as the alkaline error, or sometimes the sodium error. At highly basic pH levels, say around pH 12, the concentration of hydrogen ions is incredibly low. But the concentration of sodium ions, maybe from the sodium hydroxide you use to raise the pH, is massively high. Sometimes it's 10 orders of magnitude higher. When this happens, the glass electrode gets totally confused. It actually starts responding slightly to the sodium, which makes the meter output a pH reading that is significantly lower than reality. To combat these physical realities, we've got some rapid-fire essential rules for handling your buffers. First, discard your used buffer immediately. Don't pour it back into the bottle. Second, keep your bottles tightly capped. Remember how we exhale CO2? Well, atmospheric carbon dioxide will literally dissolve straight into an alkaline buffer, turning it acidic and ruining it completely. Third, watch out for airborne mold spores. They absolutely love growing in neutral buffers. And finally, always use automatic temperature compensation, or ATC, because temperature fundamentally changes that Nernstian slope we talked about. Before we finish up, I want to leave you with this high-yield troubleshooting guide. If you find you just cannot calibrate, check your buffers. They might be expired or contaminated. If you're seeing drifting readings, actually, it's almost certainly temperature fluctuations altering the glass impedance, so you need to let the system thermally equilibrate. And if your electrode has a painfully slow response, the glass is probably dried out. Just submerge it in the proper electrolyte to rehydrate for a full 24 hours. Empower yourself with these solutions. I promise, they'll save your research. We've journeyed all the way from the breath in our lungs to the tiny 50-nanometer layer of a glass electrode. So I want to leave you with this final provocative thought to end today's explainer. How does this delicate, almost invisible dance of hydrogen ions and electrical potential govern absolutely everything in our world, from the vast acidity of our oceans to the rhythm of your very own heartbeat? The sheer power of chemistry is hidden right there in plain sight, dictating the balance of life itself. Thank you so much for joining me today. Stay curious and keep exploring.